Suhel, I'm going to dive straight in and talk about immediacy. It's overtaken intentionality in messaging. How would you describe the transformation of public communication in the last decade, especially in relation to immediacy, reaction culture, speed?
I think it's all exaggerated. Immediacy is the cause of many problems. One such problem was seen at the Oval Office between Zelensky, Trump, and Vance. If Zelensky had paused, used an interpreter, which is a nice old practice, he wouldn't have reacted so sharply to the stupid comments of both Trump and Vance. So immediacy is actually not a good thing. Alacrity of purpose is good. But this desire to shoot and scoot, to respond to everything that comes your way, to look at every WhatsApp message, I mean, we are slowly becoming digital slaves of the worst kind. People are unable to think. There was a reason that there was a slogan that think before you speak. Today, you speak before you think, and then you're thinking about what you said for the rest of your life. So I've never understood and never agreed with this whole immediacy bit. Messaging is about getting the message across. Messaging is not about creating and transferring a message. So, a lot of people, in their desire to fulfill social or moral obligations, feel it important to respond to every message. No, you do not respond to every message that comes your way because some of them are puerile or stupid. The problem has even manifested itself further because you're always wanting to come across as a person who's connected, who's with it, who knows what to do. Doesn't matter. In the long run, as Emerson or John Maynard Keynes said, in the long run, we're all dead. So this rush to do things is, to my mind, just unnecessary.
Let me dig into that silence that you touched on. You mentioned it off the top. I call that the technique pause, answer, stop. As in, stop talking for goodness sake at some point, especially when it comes to media. Silence in and of itself, off the top, sure, that helps the speaker. But silence, how does it help the listener? We fill things with verbal ums and ahs. We're so worried that someone's going to interrupt before we finished our thought. So we and we try to hold our spot. But the power of silence in having the listener listen to you and translate what you're saying, how important is that?
There it is.
Yeah.
You'll be worried. Oh my God, is the connection good? Is it stable? Is his microphone on? I'm digesting whatever you said. I've done 167 plays. The most important thing in a play is to know when to pause. Because only when you pause can you allow for your colleague, your co-actor, to jump in. There's a reason why we have phrases like a stage pause or a stage whisper or purposeful pauses. It's not about that, Doug. I'll go back to the basics. As a society, we've become less and less verbal. We've become messengers. We haven't become, verbal craftsmen. This whole LOL, LON, BRB. I mean, what kind of rubbish is this? No one is busy or so busy that they can't craft words which other common people, simple people understand. I also believe that public speaking has gone out of the window in these times. Public speaking feeds on scholarship, it feeds on the ability to read, and more importantly, the ability to absorb. If you go back in time, go into history, say 6,000 years ago, we had no education, but we had knowledge. We then created an education system, an edifice. You went, you did 12 years of school, you did 3 years of college, you did 2 years of postgrad. So what did we do? We started telling people that, oh, look, we are going to create for you a degree, which then makes you as much of a cookie cutter as everyone else is. And knowledge went out of the window. So once a Doug or a Farzana completed their college education, they thought they knew it all. Today, knowledge is non-existent. People are not reading. People are not able to digest or absorb. And remember, knowledge is not about how much you read, but it's about your ability to contextualize. Unless society is able to contextualize something, you will never win the debate. See, the difference between animals and human beings in the mammal kingdom is animals think, but their thoughts are not necessarily, related to their actions. Human beings think and are expected to act on the basis of their thoughts, which sometimes we confuse with beliefs. That's the essential difference. Unless you're able to reflect on what you've said or reflect on the knowledge you have, you can never give a considered opinion. You can open your mouth, but it won't be an opinion which is thought through, which is calibrated. And I may disagree with you, but I can't be disagreeable. And for that, you need elements of silence, you need elements of reflection.
So you mentioned context, which is such a key part of the work that we do as PRs. Do you think the reason why there is a lack of understanding and a quick sort of response rate in responding to things, for instance, on X, that people perhaps don't understand the historical concept? Do you think it's because there's a lack of curiosity? Do you think it's because social media has wired our brains that we are constantly just doom scrolling? And there's so many people that I know, even including authors, they don't even have the attention span to read anymore, but they've got the attention span to binge for sort of 9 episodes straight on Netflix. Do you think there's been a rewiring of the brain that has led us to sort of drop the that sort of acquisition of knowledge that's required in contextual understanding? What changes have been made over the decades that you've been observing society that has led to this situation where people are very ready to give opinions, but not necessarily ready to read up around the context and have a truly informed opinion?
Opinions are cheap. A calibrated opinion isn't, because you have to research, you have to have context, you have to have knowledge. B, there's the overwhelming desire to please your peers and to be one like them. See, we are no longer a society that thrives on differentiation. We thrive on commonality, both in purpose, in belief. We feel terrible if we were to be politically incorrect, or we were at a dinner and we actually said something that would cause affront, which is why wokeism as a concept is a negative concept. It seems to suggest that only the wokes are liberal, and that liberal thinking must come from a left leaning academic bent of view. That has to change. And I'm not for a moment saying Trump will bring that change, or, you need it or you don't need it. Point I'm making is that this cannot be a situation where the world today says what it has without repercussion, without responsibility, and without relevance. So if you guide your life by the 3 R's, responsibility, repercussion, and relevance, you'll be a much better human being, because you'll be responsible for what you say. You will analyze the repercussions, and you will see whether what you say is relevant to the context setting at that particular moment on that particular topic.
Feels a lot like we tend to form our opinions along these tribal lines. If I think I'm blue, my friends are blue, everyone around me is blue, then I'm not red. And if I think something is coming from red, I'm going to disregard it regardless of its benefits. I'm just going to decide with blue. I think that's social impact theory. That seems to be what it comes down to. I don't take the time to contextualize or consider because it didn't come from blue. If the same idea came from blue, I'd be all in.
It's cunning comfort, Doug. You're cunning enough to be comfortable or look at people or make yourself comfortable given the environment you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So I have always said that over the years, I've seen more and more people take less and less of a stand. We're not willing to stand up and be counted. We do not want to upset anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But Churchill said the only person you've got to be popular with is your wife. Now, the point is that if you try and be popular with everyone, you'll never succeed.
Mm.
Look at what Shakespeare says in Julius Caesar. The good is oft interred with the bones, the evil lives long after. So no matter how much good you do, people will still bitch you out. So why would you lie to yourself? Let's understand human behavior in the context of what we are discussing. Whenever we lie either to please or to hide. There are only two reasons to lie. You don't lie for a third reason. When you're lying to please or you're lying to hide, eventually the truth does emerge. A. B. When you lie, you have to remember what you said, which makes it even more, weighty as an issue. Third, when you get caught, what face do you have? But the reason why we're not worried about these things is because shame has gone out of the window in today's world. We're no longer ashamed of what we stand for, why we stand for something, because actually, Doug and Farzana, we don't stand for anything. We are amoeba-like in our mental faculties. We are sponge-like in our human behavior. We don't have the intellectual heft or the capacity to separate the wheat from the chaff. We think it improper, politically incorrect, socially unwise to be disruptors. But human beings are brands. You're not 1, 2, 3, 7, 8. You're Doug.
Mm-hmm.
She's Farzana.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, you're a brand. Brands by nature are disruptive, but brands by nature also provide benefits. So if Farzana is providing a benefit, she's providing a benefit because her mind can disrupt the status quo and give a solution which is path breaking. Likewise for you. But we're unwilling to do that. And I will lay the blame squarely on only two areas: parenting and the lack of quest for knowledge. All societies which have outsourced parenting in some form or the other are facing social issues like you and I can't imagine.
You mean if my kids are on their phone all the time?
That's bad.
Something's got to
And
raise
that's a
them,
problem.
Suhel.
That's a problem that you've caused.
Yeah.
It's the problem lies with you. Again, to quote Shakespeare, it's not in our stars but in ourselves that we are underlings. So, if you allow for this situation to emerge, it'll happen.
You work internationally, Suhel, India, US, UK, all over the world. So you have a truly global perspective. You're beginning to see some encroaching regulation on social media. For instance, Australia has been making some noises about wanting to ban social media for under 16s. Do you see different cultures when you're operating in all these different countries having a different awareness level of the harm and help that social media brings to society?
So I'm going to say something really dramatic, even while we are on a manifestation of social media. I think social media is overrated, it's cumbersome, and it's dangerous. It is a digital drug. Just like you would ban cocaine, you should ban social media. But banning is not an answer because they will find another way. Subterfuge is again not a solution. My belief is that it is entirely up to a human being how you want to run your life. I am on social media when I choose to be and when I have something important to say that I think is important. You might think it's baloney. So what? I have the platform, I have the reach, I will say what I want. But I have decided long ago that I will only comment on political current affairs, and where I will help people is only in blood donation. Because in India, with the amount of head injury accidents, blah, 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 there's always a need for blood. And I retweet all of that. I repost that. But that's me. I use Instagram to have fun. I post what I'm having for breakfast. But I do not believe I have the right to preach. The problem is we have all become pontificators. And the actual pontiff is unwell. So we are now wanting to pontificate on everything, which, by the way, is also fine, provided you have the knowledge. In the absence of knowledge, in the absence of context, in the absence of purposeful opinions, if you comment on something, it will be hollow. It will be pleasurable, but so is sleeping with an elephant. But when the elephant rolls over, the pleasure can turn into pain.
Suhel, you have. Okay, I'll let Doug just.
Just the pictures
process
playing
that.
through for me. That's all.
So Suhel, you have about 4.5 million followers on X last time I checked. And it's extraordinary how you take this, very centered approach to communications, because X always sort of struck me as a very fast moving, immediacy reigns sort of platform. And you probably see the absolute full breadth of humanity through engaging with your followers. Now, what I wanted to ask you is you have followers from all over the world, obviously, a significant number of followers from India as well. I wanted you to share some advice on those people who are listening, who understand that India is this incredible, fast growing market. And they want to start thinking about market access, about brand translation. You're obviously the king of sort of market entry for India. I wanted to ask a few sort of thoughts that you've had over the last sort of 10 years, as well as, looking back, as well as present and future, for companies that are interested in doing business in India, in accessing this fast growing consumer demographic, and what you've seen in terms of what works. And you've obviously seen others just fall flat on their face as well.
So, India is a There's a lovely book by Mark Tully, who was the longest serving BBC correspondent in India. The title of the book is There Are No Full Stops in India. But what he brilliantly says in the book is whatever you see of India, the opposite is equally true. Remember, the biggest mistake you will make is by defining India as a consumer market, which all of us do. India is a civilizational legacy. All civilizational legacies may have multiple facades, but at their base, they are all rooted to their cultural rootedness, which is why language is critical. Cultural alignment is critical. I remember when Kellogg's came to India, there was a discussion and people were asking for advice, blah, blah, blah. I said the biggest mistake Kellogg's will make is if they believe they're competing against Indian porridge. They're competing with 127 ways that India has breakfast. In the east of India, you have breakfast in the morning, which is with, eggs, mutton curry, Indian bread. It's like a full meal. In Gujarat, it's with dhoklas, it's with, very frugal, blah, blah, blah. So when you come into any market, especially like India, you have to remember that A, India is not a country, it's a continent. B, India is linguistically hugely scattered and hugely proud of its linguistic identity. Language is again not something that you can also speak. Language is also an expression. So if you want to succeed in India, you've got to get the underlying expression of that word and then translate your communication strategy. Finally, market access, and you're absolutely right. People who fail in India are people who believe that they can clone other markets onto an Indian ecosystem. Doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Which is why, in a very strange way, and I'm glad you asked the question, how many Indian brands have gone global? Very few. Because the construct of an Indian brand cannot fit any other society. Because Indian brands by nature have inbuilt elasticity, inbuilt flexibility, and inbuilt extensibility, so that you can extend the brand as much because you have to deal with so many contradictions within the subcontinent.
That's really fascinating, because in India there's a term called jugad, and and I don't know how you feel about it, Suhel, but it really sort of encapsulates the Indian way, that you just make something happen through flexibility, but it does happen. And
That's a terrible word. So
why?
one of our industrialists, Anand Mahindra, used that word, and I came down heavily on Twitter saying this is exactly what we want to avoid. Because jugaad actually, Farzana, in its colloquial sense, means the ability to take a shortcut or hoodwink, which is why India is not very good at process. We're very good with passion. We're terrible with discipline. We're very good with setting up laws. Unless you change a society and make it process driven, you will always have problems. Because process is tangible, passion is intangible. Discipline is measured. Passion, you can't measure. How can I measure how passionate I am while I'm standing or breaking the queue for a glass of milk? So it's very important to understand, in order to build a society based on rule of law, you have to ensure that both process and passion work in tandem without denigrating each other.
Do you think, Sahel, working in, markets like North America, Europe, there is a great deal of emphasis upon process and less so in markets like India. But do you not think that actually the Indian approach is increasingly going to be more useful as the world is sort of moving so fast and there's constant crisis and that need of agility rather than just thinking process orientated? I mean, back in the day, companies and organizations used to have very long sort of long-term strategies, and now the strategy cycle is getting less and less, and it's becoming really difficult to actually plan ahead. And that sort of that marriage to process that Western businesses and organizations really hold dear, is that still going to be useful for them going forward when, as you can see, the last few months alone, I mean, people have been tossing policies out of the window left, right and center. The world order is sort of pivoting in all sorts of directions that you would never have imagined 6 months ago.
So that's a great question. The thing is, it's not about one or the other. You can't say process is bad. But look at North America, and whenever I worked there, I've always seen a palpable fear in brand managers to take risks because their lives are run by analysts, who are measuring them quarter by quarter. And the base is so large. So even a 1% shake-up can really, mess up the company. The Indian way is also not right. Because let's pause for a minute and imagine that Indians are, and they are brilliant, blah, blah, blah. Why did we never create a Facebook? Why did we not create a Google? Why did we not create a Microsoft? And yet people of Indian origin are hitting Microsoft and Google. The reason we didn't create it is twofold. Number one, we are not natural innovators, or we weren't until about, say, 7, 8 years ago. Number two, failure is looked down upon in India in a severe manner. People castigate failure. So if Steve Jobs had been an Indian, there would have been no Apple, because first time around, if we had screwed up, no bank would have given him a loan. Whereas other societies are more appreciative of action and less deprecatory about failure, which is why you are given a second lease of life. Now, that to my mind is the perfect marriage. You must allow for disruption, you must allow for innovation, you must have process, but you must also be a risk taker. Where America and a lot of the developed economies suffer is their risk-taking capacity has been totally diminished for fear of stock markets.
You talked about perceived weaknesses within India. What about from the external perspective? If there is a great idea that comes from India, would the world respond to it? And I suppose I'm thinking of North America in particular. If it's an idea out of India, doesn't it sort of have to be an idea that was actually out of California or out of New York or something? Would it be received as readily, or am I thinking old?
No, of course it would be. What happened with DeepSeek? Came from China, a country
Right.
that America hates.
Great point. Great
Look,
point.
America is a different ball game. America is not a culturally united country because of its vast, migration and immigration, repertoire or rainbow.
Melting pot idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and Americans don't care where the idea comes from as long as it makes them money.
That's
Their
true in the end.
their yardstick is profit. It's not about where the idea comes from. So identity is not an issue with them because they don't have one of their own. America is what, a 400-year-old, maybe 450-year-old country, as in the United States of America. So when you compare a 450-year-old country to a 4,000-year-old civilization legacy, of course there's going to be a mismatch. Plus, please remember, people always lived in India. So therefore, they didn't have a pernicious or non-pernicious purpose to live in India. But everyone who comes to America comes with one desire: to make it big. So, in a very strange way, America has only one opportunity to provide you. Come, get rich. India don't care because they've always been there. Today, look at the way your visas are given. What is Trump doing with the with the Trump card? I mean, no pun intended. $5 million. Americans will sell their soul at the altar of Benjamin. And I refer not to Franklin, but you know what I'm referring to. So don't compare America to any other country. That country has been born out of the dissatisfaction that man had with his existing geographies. When people first came to America, especially from Italy and Spain, large parts of Europe, where did they come? To Boston. You remember the Boston Tea Party. Where did Lehman Brothers begin? Boston. And I'll give you a very interesting quote, which is mine. Someone asked me, oh, how do you define success in America? So I said, it's always where you land. You will never see a guy who's landed in Pittsburgh from Venice making it big. Because even within America, there are places in America that feed innovation, that feed the desire to do well and to strike it out big. Why? There is a reason why Boston is referred to as the New England area. Lethargic, relaxed, academic. New York. Old saying, if you can survive in New York, you can survive anywhere else. San Francisco, LA, academics, entertainment, culture, wokeism, different path of identity. But in a strange way, look at LA. Every woman and most men as well are actually trying to redo their identities through Botox and all that nonsense.
Lots of it, yeah.
So there you are. I'll tell you one thing, Doug, and not enough work has been done in this area of late. We have forgotten how to analyze societies, their interplay with their own culture, and their interplay with fresh culture. See, a person in England or a person in America looks at migration from the point of view, oh, this guy from Senegal is now coming to America. We fail to understand, is that person from Senegal coming with a basket of cultural enrichment? And can we actually borrow or, absorb that cultural enrichment? If you look at the history of India, we've been invaded and conquered so many times. But India has always absorbed the best of what every invader or conqueror has had to offer. Take, for example, the Mughals. They have given us a genre of food, of couture, of cuisine, of culture, music that we would have otherwise not gotten. The British. So you have to be thankful for the cultural rootedness, and which is why I keep going back to the point that unless you're culturally secure, you will never be socially relevant. Your social irrelevance comes out of the turbulence and the disenchantment that you have with your cultural rootedness, if you have any.
I often found it really fascinating how different parts of the US has very different, distinct sort of subcultures.
Definitely.
And when I spent some time in California, and I was sort of asking why does it feel so different than New York? And they said, well, think about it. Our ancestors landed in New York, and our ancestors were the ones who were the dreamers, the travelers, the ones that went from New York to the other side, to the extreme other side of the US. And that's a certain mindset that says, let's not settle here, let's go further. And that's the innovative mind, that's the hopeful mind. And that is actually the mind also of an entrepreneur, which is why you see the most incredible innovation coming out of California. And so it's absolutely fascinating, the mindset of those who migrate, and then how it shapes sort of ecosystems of excellence in business. Really fascinating.
Thanks again, Suhel. It's great to spend time with you.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Farzana.
Thank you, Suhel. All the best.
Bye.